Hey YouTube, if you're creative, a service provider, or freelancer in general, you probably have charged by the hour or you continue to charge by the hour in some of your projects. And the pain points of charging by the hours are so acute that I hear them so often in my one-on-one coaching room with creators. This is why today I'm giving you a step-by-step guide on how to shift beyond charging by the hour. The material is a little dense. I prepared a lot for you, so I'm just going to tell you how we're going to roll today. First, I'm going to articulate who this is for and who this is not for. Definitely the materials I talk about today apply generally to most creators at some point in their career, but just want to be very specific who this might not be for. Secondly, I'm going to talk about why charging by the hour is now hindering your growth and well-being. Then I'm going to show you some alternative models of pricing in your creative practice. Last but not least, to answer the burning question that everybody has, I'm going to tell you how to actually shift away from charging hourly rate. Are you ready? Let's go. Before we dive into today's topic though, I have an exciting announcement to make. Wow, I'm getting so excited even talking on this for the first time on podcast. In this fall 2023, so September, I'm launching a group coaching program for the first time. The group coaching program is called Conscious Creatives Group Coaching Program, and it is a hybrid program that combines group coaching of 3.5 months of group coaching, as well as a private portal of video resources where I teach topics on identity transformation, pricing, similar to today's topic, creative process, and how to put the intentional structure and flexible structure in our creative practice so that creative freelancers or self-employed creatives who have make some tractions in their creative career can make an identity shift, but also build a flexible structure that can support them to have a sustainable practice and business in the long run. I'm super excited for this program because it comes from a place that over the last 2 years of coaching creatives one-on-one, I hear that there are creatives in this spot that they of course love the coaching, but also love some community support. And from like-minded creators and from other people who are doing different things. As you know, I don't just coach one type of creatives there, so there are people who have multifaceted things going on. And for me, I love it when they share with me their feedback and also tell me that, well, Betty, I know that you have a lot to share, but what if we can also co-learn from each other? I have to say, took me a long time to design this program and finally roll it out this way because I really want to make sure that this provides us first safe, secondly uplifting, and third productive space for creatives. And more details are going to come in the middle of the summer, but right now you can already join the wait list or you can just message me and say you'll be interested to hear more, and we can chat about it, or I can send you more information later. Again, really excited for this group program, and I'm so thankful for all of you who listen to this podcast and provide feedback for me. We're really creating a community of intentional, conscious creatives here, and that's very amazing. And I cannot do it without your support. Now, let's dive into today's topic, pricing. All right, let me talk about who this episode is designed for and who this is not for, because I want to be very careful, and it's part of my value when I give advice that it's not a blanket advice. Some things work for others and not for some other people. So who this is for? This whole concept of moving beyond charging by the hour is very needed and designed for creators who provide a service or consultancy in their practice or business. Meaning, if you provide something to serve a group of people or customers in your practice or business, that's not a product, then you are at the right place to listen to this episode. Also, if you've been freelancing for a while, and you've gotten some tractions, you have multiple clients or multiple projects on the go, and you can foreseeably see more projects or clients coming, this is also really good. And I would argue you're kind of at that stage then, kind of crossing from a creative freelancer to someone who is a creative practitioner and have an enduring practice in a business. Now, who this is not for? So this whole concept of moving beyond hourly rates, I really don't want you to worry about it if you are just starting out, if you're graduating and getting your creative job or creative project for the first time, or if you say, I would even volunteer to go in an industry so that I can get experience. I totally hear you. I've been there myself. When we are starting out, we want to just try anything to get an opportunity. Then this episode is probably not for you. It will be for you down the road in your career. And also, I frame a lot of what this episode is about on service-based pricing. So if you are someone who is selling a physical product, like something physical, an item, I think that there are a lot of transferable mindsets from this episode for you. But I just want to make the disclaimer that all of the points that I've made come from a place of service-based pricing. So I encourage you to stay, but just know that I know that the pricing, thinking, and mindset behind product can be slightly different. So now let's get to the meaty part of this episode. Why charging hourly rate is not conducive to your creative business growth or your well-being in general. I actually want to pose this question to you first. Take the next 3 to 5 seconds and jot down an answer that you have in your mind or multiple answers. Are you ready? Think about this. What are your answers? Alright, if you have a couple points down, I bet that some of them kind of similar or are in the sphere of this couple reasons. One, hourly rate doesn't account for preparation of offboarding of a project. The best example I can think of this is a cinematographer. A cinematographer, when being paid by hourly rates, get paid by the time that they're on set. But we all know, if you know the work of cinematography, there's a lot of time that you go in preparing your gear. Secondly, linking to this, if you're traveling to provide service, usually travel is not considered in the hourly rate. For some projects, some clients would include traveling there, but a lot of times not. Third is this concept of unpredictability in the amount of work that you're getting. Say I'm being hired to manage a creative project, and the client say to me, well, you're paid by hourly. So they're not obligated to tell me how many hours I'm actually getting on a week-to-week basis. That can create a big problem on both ends. On one end, you might be getting so little work in some weeks that you crunch your number and you're actually not making that much money that month. On the other end, you might be suddenly getting so much hours that it creeps into your life and it messes up your schedule totally. We've all been there. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Last but not least, I see a lot of busy creators, once they hit a point, they have multiple projects, multiple clients, they scratch their head, ending up having to remember or having a system to count their time and hours for the hourly rate project. And they get this fear when going back to a client and say, well, actually I didn't work that much, because they are afraid that clients would then cut down their hours in the long run. Secondly, they also get a fear when they're working so much, because then they have to justify why they work so much on that specific stage in the project. Again, this probably goes like, you probably go, ouch, when you're hearing this, because we've been there, you've been there. For me, all of these reasons are legitimate, right? They really speak to the pain that we've experienced. But when I sit down and reflect on this topic, all of these reasons, while legitimate, they don't get to the heart of why hourly rates no longer serve us. Think about this. When you're starting out as a creative, hourly rates used to be not a problem. When you're starting out, you're so happy that someone is paying you to do the work that you love. You're still proving yourself that you have legitimate skills, you're still accumulating your expertise. So why is hourly rate suddenly a problem now that you've progressed along in your creative career? The problem is this. Charging an hourly rate still signifies that you're someone that's charged by the amount of time that you work on something rather than your skills, expertise, and craft that you've developed and accumulated. And that is at the heart of why hourly rates is not a problem for someone that's starting out, but as we progress or become mid-career, hourly rates percent or gets exactly in the way that for our growth and our well-being. Congratulations! It's a good problem to have. It means you've made progress and developed expertise and confidence. However, it is still a problem. So, how do we address that problem? And what are the alternative models of pricing? Okay, so you want to shift beyond charging by the hour, and you now know what's the downside of charging by the hour. What are the actual pricing models that you can shift to? I've summarized here for you. There are pretty much like 3 models that you can charge by that's beyond the hourly rate model. Number 1 is retainer model. This is best for when the work that or the service that you offer are multifaceted and it's actually quite hard to quantify or define the scope month to month. Then I highly recommend that you put that kind on a retainer model. The best example is what I do. I offer fundraising consulting service, and from an organization standpoint, that work is ongoing, but it's also hard to define from month to month what actually happens within fundraising. So some of my clients are on retainer model, and it works really well both for the clients, they don't need to worry about it, and I don't need to worry about it. And we never get into the spot that like if they have so much, they have more amount of work that month, they are worried about whether they can reach out to me, or if there's not enough work, I'm worrying about whether I need to ask for more work. It just takes care of a lot of like unnecessary conversation because there's a general consensus that the work is ongoing and is multifaceted. The second model is project fee or package fee. This is when, unlike retainer model, which the scope is a bit hard to define on an ongoing basis, this is when there's a set scope, set length of time usually, and as you can like reasonably predict the amount of hours that go into this. Of course, one concern there is that when you are pricing for this, you might again fall for the trap of counting your hours in an unreasonable amount. So just be very careful that when you're putting a project fee, like you are actually pricing it according to your expertise and not just like, well, if I work minimum amount, like minimum wage, these are the number of hours that will go into this project, and that's what the project fee is, then you're actually just snap right back to charging by the hour instead of charging by your expertise and skill. Just be careful with that because scope creep will be a big concern if you're underpricing your project fee. But in general, if you're pricing like in a way that like speaks to your expertise and skills, project fee is an excellent way for something that's defined, and you get to negotiate the project fee upfront. Or if you're someone that have standardized package of offering, like a photographer, it's a good example of this. Usually the package quite defined. Or my coaching service is a package that I've intentionally put in the journey and experience, and I price according to that. And this is where this is really good. And it takes care of the doubts of like how many hours actually went into that. The conversation doesn't even go there. Last but not least, if you go, well, Betty, I hear what you're saying in the last section about the paying of hourly fee, but for the work that I do and the clients that I face, there's just no way they would just shift to a retainer fee or a project fee, because there usually is an on-call nature to the work and they're used to the hourly rate. Then I still highly suggest that you consider something like hourly rate with a minimum number of hours attached, or a half-day rate or day rate or weekly rate. You see where I'm going with this, right? Anything that guarantee kind of like predictability, or even what you consider as the minimum amount of time that you need for that bucket of work, is better than going in the dark and then figure out later how many hours actually involved. And this model is perfect when the project cycle is very short. Like cinematography is a good example of this. You go on and offer half-day cinematography, charge by the half-day rates or your day rates rather than the hourly rates, because you don't want to be on set and them arguing, well, I actually worked 2 more hours than expected today. You want to be there and say, well, my day rate is this, and then if there's an overage of 8 hours, then every overage hour is this. So definitely consider that, even if you can't do the project or retainer fee. For these 3 models, I would say there's really no right answer of which model works best for you. As you saw, I kind of broke it down in the types or the scope of work that you do. So choose your own adventure. So we talked about the why hourly rate is not conducive to your growth. We've talked about what other models are there. Now, how do you actually shift to those models? So the steps to actually get there would sound exceedingly simple to you when I lay it out to you. But there's a couple nuance and mindset pieces that's crucial to the how. So let's dive in. Let me give you the exact steps. They're really just 3 steps. 1, get a clear understanding what your offerings are and their pricing. Do a little bit of like projections of like what your standard offering and the associated price, appropriate pricing according to that. Second, make sure you do a little bit of research and that the research reflects that your pricing is competitive. Number 3, inform your clients or your customers. Okay, I told you that the steps are exceedingly simple, but as in my experience coaching clients through this process, there are like major mindset hump that you need to overcome in actually executing the action. The fundamental to shifting to this new pricing model, whether it's retainer, project fee, or hourly rate with minimum, is this piece. There is a step 0 before step 1. Do you believe that you are offering your expertise rather than your labor? You are the one that have to make the decision and be so that your unique style, way of doing things, your skill set, your experience, perspective is of value before you can convince other people that that is of value. So you essentially is the first person have to make the shift and the first person that has to be convinced. If this piece is not done, you will end up in the spots that you flip-flop or hesitate when you're executing that 3 simple steps. And especially at 2 stages. Number 1, when you're like getting a clear understanding of offering a pricing, there might be the hesitancy of, well, do I price it by the hour? Then I will just encourage you to go right back and check, well, no, you're pricing it by your expertise and the competitive rate out there. Number 2, the biggest hiccups, and I'm sure a lot of the fear comes out, is when you have to inform the clients. Earlier when I said it, you probably already had a gut reaction. I need to go tell the clients. Well, let me break this down for you. There's 2 types of clients that you need to inform. For new clients, it's actually relatively straightforward if you yourself is sold by the fact that you are not charging by the hour. Because the process goes like this, 1 or 2 ways. 1, either you publish the rate on a standardized package on your website, And there's no debate about that. As some of you know, that's what I do with my coaching service. Is very transparent. It's on my website. When people come to talk to me about working with me, they already read the website and the conversation goes very smoothly. Secondly, if you are someone that you prefer to have a conversation first and then announce your rate, then literally the conversation goes to, if a client goes, what's your hourly rate? You go, I don't charge by hourly rate, but we can hop on a call and understand the scope of the project so I can prepare a customized quote for you. How does that sound? Quite simple, right? But I'm sure you go, well, what if the client says no at that point, Betty? Well, then I would say you have a decision to make. If the client just completely flat out say no, which I just want to give you the safety, 80% of the time, I think roughly, you won't have someone like that if they actually want to work with you. My personal bias in this case is actually just walk away from that situation, because how aligned is that client going to be with you down the road if they can't even jump on a call and talk about it and respect your pricing model? This is also why I said that this piece about moving beyond hourly rates might not be with someone if they are just beginning and really need new projects, because only after you have a certain demand that your brain and your body feel safe to say no to a potential new client like that doesn't comply with your pricing model. And do you see how at this stage it's critically important that you stand your ground firm? This is why if you don't believe that you are charging by your expertise, then this step falls apart. Let me talk about the other buckets of clients that actually most people are probably burning to ask, which is existing client. How do you actually handle a conversation with an existing client that you've been charging by the hour and want to shift them to an alternative model? What you can do is suggest, again, you have to make the decisions when it's a good time. Suggest a meeting to talk about that your service or your pricing model has changed. Might you have a conversation about this? And then at that meeting, you can announce to them that this is shifting and you want to continue working with them. How can they and you work out something that meets your new pricing model? Again, sounds very simple. I'm sure some fear and doubts are already coming up. The exact same question of, what if the client say no? Comes up. I would say this again. If the client said no, for existing client, I can see that a situation where they just got so used to the hourly pricing and it might be very hard for them to change right away. In that case, you can, in the discussion, proactively offer them a runway for change. So the way I will approach this is that I know that I've been charging by hourly, but going forward for all my clients, this is very important. You should stress that you're doing this all across the board. It's not specific to them. I'm shifting to a new pricing model, project fee, retainer fee, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to make this change suddenly. So let's talk about runway that's suitable for you. In some cases, I would even just pinpoint what the runway is, 3 months, 2 months, whatever that works for you and the client. So usually if you give people a runway for change, the conversation goes very smoothly. Then, of course, there's the bucket that just wouldn't budge. Let's imagine kind of the worst client possible and be like, no way, that doesn't work for us. Then you probably know what I'm going to say again. You have a choice to make here. What is it about this client's work that's so important that if they don't what is it about this client's work that is so important that you want to retain them even if they cannot comply to a new pricing model? I don't want to make a decision for you. You have to judge that maybe this client brings you out of value. Is it because it's a well-known client? Is it because it brings you a learning opportunity that you don't get elsewhere? Whatever that is, if you have a valid reason, then you of course can stay with the old pricing model with them. But if there is no valid reason that you can come up with and the client is just seemingly very difficult, I ask again, how sustainable this relationship can it be down the road? One of the exercises that I do with my clients quite a bit is, what does a good exit look like from a working relationship? I think that's a really good question for you to ask yourself at that point. You already got a huge red flag that this client doesn't seem to be aligned with your values. And as you map out a plan for a good exit, I would never suggest kind of like a sudden dramatic exit because that's not suitable for most people. But I do want to nudge you to think about what's the right thing to do here, even if it's scary. Alright, at this point, I hope that I've cleared out all the potential pathways to execute the 3 steps. Again, the 3 steps are: get a clear understanding what your offerings are and the pricing. Second, do a little bit of market research. Then, inform the clients. Straightforward but not simple, I know. I want to support you in this process by also addressing some mental objections that might come up as you execute this process. Number 1 is, what if you're actually not working that much for a project on week-to-week basis? How can I justify a project fee or retainer fee? If you've been hearing what I said, that the step 0 is about convincing yourself or being able to stand on your authority and your knowing that you are worth a specific rate because of your expertise, not your labor, then I would say that if this objection comes up, that means that your mindset work hasn't really transformed yet. You haven't really convinced yourself that you should be charged by your expertise rather than the amount of time that you're working on something. Think about this. The amount of time that someone is very skilled at doing something, in doing the exact same thing. Let me give you an example. I would say that I cook okay well. I'm sort of like that, like just elementary home cook. I would say that's where I am. I like cooking, but I'm not often cooking, and I'm not taking that as like my craft or whatnot. However, my partner, he's really known for like cooking as his like biggest hobby outside work, and over the years he's accumulated such expertise in cooking. Think about the amount of time that requires him to do the same task or the same dish compared to me. Probably way less. But who would actually pay for, or who actually want to taste the dish? Probably way more people want to taste what he makes than what I make. And I'm not even putting myself down. I'm just being honest. So in that case, would it make sense if I'm charging more than what he's charging? No, you go, that's ridiculous. Of course I would pay the chef. So whenever that doubt comes up, just think about this example of people pay for your skills and expertise. They're not paying for how slowly you're working on something. Ouch. Second objection. This is for people who really care about the community and about giving back. What if a low budget project comes out and really want to help and they just cannot afford my normal rates? So when there's a low budget project comes out that you really want to help out, or there's a really good learning opportunity because you get to work with someone that you really admire, or it's a project that's giving back to the community, I would say, well, that's an exception. That's not a norm. You still should do the fundamental work and get the pricing model firm. It doesn't negate that bucket work. Don't use this as an excuse. But in this case, what you can do is making an exception. You can either volunteer or do pro bono work, or you can do an honorarium model. The third one I particularly love. Sometimes for projects that you want to kind of give a discount because of community service or give back, give them a proper quote and show them what your normal rate is, and then on the quote show how steep the discount you have given them. This way, if you see that this project actually potentially in the future going to become a normal client, then they knew right away from the beginning that they were getting a discounted service and you're doing this for the good of the project or for the passion of the project. This way, there's no confusion what your normal rate is. The last thing I would say is this, and this is particularly for people who are very community minded and have a great integrity in serving the people that they serve and also the community they belong to, and want to uplift the community of professions that they are in. And every time I've said this to a client, and I've said this numerous times, it really hits them. So I want to share with you. If you do truly care about uplifting the community that you're in, or the profession of people that you belong to, how are you actually doing a service to them, or the people that come after you, even if you are systemically, even though unintentionally, lowering the bar of pricing and reinforcing the mindset of pricing scarcity? Think about this. If I don't shift to a model of pricing that's more speak to my expertise and my skills, that means that people come after me probably don't have room to raise their price as well. And there will be projects that people are just looking for people who are more emerging. So if your pricing doesn't sit there and set the bar as a mid-career or more established career creatives, how are you actually making rooms for the projects that don't align with your pricing to be funneled to other people who have less experience but are looking for work? So I really want to encourage you to think beyond that scarcity mindset and hone in your authority and your experience and behave and embody the identity of someone who is more mid-career or have progressed along in your creative practice. And it starts right here, right now, with your pricing model. Okay, so we finally concluded this lesson or episode on pricing and moving beyond hourly rates. I know that it's a little long, but I hope that it gives you a comprehensive guide. And I know also there will be more questions as you watch this video and what specific context that you are working in. Feel free to connect with me on my Instagram or just put a comment below in this video so that we can have a discussion. I think this topic about pricing gets into the heart of how to resolve that scarcity mindset or starving artist mindset that's so prevalent in our creative sector. So I'm very excited to share this with you, and let's continue the conversation on how to support you in your journey. And of course, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications. This is where you can see more video resources and in conversations with other creators on how to consciously, intentionally manage our creative career and creative growth. I see you next time, YouTube.